Before anyone spoke of Taoism, there was only the restlessness of an age. Kingdoms argued like thunder across the plains of ancient China. Roads filled with dust, borders shifted, ministers whispered strategies that glittered like knives. Under that noise, a quieter hunger kept returning. How do we live without hardening? How does a person or a ruler move through the world without turning life into a cage? Some turned to ritual and law. Others withdrew to mountains and listened to water. In that listening, a word rose that was not quite a word. Tao, the way. Not a road on a map, but the pattern by which clouds travel and seeds split stone, the current that carries the 10,000 things without boasting. Later, a small book would speak of it in 81 short chapters, as if wisdom were best packed like medicine, potent in tiny doses. Tradition calls the book the Dao De Jing and attributes it to Laozi, the old master, who some say rode a water buffalo west and left his text at a frontier pass for a keeper who asked him not to vanish without a trace. Whether Laozi was one person, many voices, or a legend does not dull the blade of the verses themselves. They arrive like wind. The way that can be spoken is not the constant way. If the way is like water, then force is a misunderstanding. Water wears down cliffs by not competing with them. From this intuition comes Wu-Wei, often called non-action, but better felt as non-forcing. Acting in accord with the grain so nothing splinters in your hands. A sage is not lazy. The sage simply stops shoving the world. And when pushing stops, things begin to move. The Dao De Jing praises what bends, what yields, what returns. It treats clinging as a kind of ignorance and softness as a deeper strength. In practice, Wu-Wei feels like timing, like doing exactly enough and then letting the river do the rowing. Taoist writings pair Wu-Wei with Ziran, the self-so, the naturalness of a pine being a pine, a child laughing without rehearsal, breath finding its own depth when no one is trying to impress the air. To model oneself on Ziran is to relax the grip of performance until attention becomes transparent and action becomes simple. It isn't an excuse to drift. It is the end of needless strain. Like moonlight on a stream, effort is still present, but you cannot see the hand that guides it. And there is Yin-Yang, the old emblem that looks like two fishes asleep in a circle. Night in day in night, winter carrying the seed of spring, summer already tilting toward autumn. Not enemies, complements, taking turns. When a ruler or a person leans too far into one, the other returns to restore the dance. Taoism does not worship stillness against movement or softness against firmness. It watches for the moment where each is right and lets the moment decide. Encyclopedia Britannica. Amid these images, another voice will rise, the playful philosopher we now call Zhuangzi, who will show Wu-Wei through stories, a butcher whose blade never dulls because he follows the spaces between the bones, a dream of being a butterfly so convincing that daylight cannot quite undo it, the freedom of a person who stops arguing with reality long enough to hear what it's saying. We will meet him soon. For now, it is enough to sense the promise, skill without strain, clarity without cruelty, ease without apathy. If you are listening at night, imagine an old road, empty, and a traveller pausing at a pass. He is tired of speeches that turn every question into a parade. He writes a few lines instead, short, spare, stubbornly honest, and hands them to the gatekeeper. Rule a big country like you, cook a small fish, gently. The soft overcomes the hard. Whoever knows does not shout. The traveller leaves no monument, only a direction. The book crosses centuries in the pockets of farmers, the sleeves of scholars, the mouths of children who like the taste of its comparisons, water, valley, uncarved wood, And the way keeps refusing to be a slogan. It will not be nailed to a single doctrine or party. It asks for sensitivity to circumstance, for a trust that life is more cooperative than we fear when we stop clutching at it. It invites a king to rule by less meddling, and a craftsperson to work by listening to materials, and an ordinary person to breathe until the knot in the chest loosens by itself. None of this requires incense. All of it requires attention. So the stage is set, an age of noise and a path that prefers quiet, a world of clenched fists and a wisdom that opens the hand. In the next part, we walk with Laozi into the text itself, the Dao De Jing, to hear how emptiness can be useful, how softness can carry weight, and how Wu-Wei turns urgency into timing, the way a sailor turns wind into travel. Open the little book like you would lift a bowl of clear water, without spilling, without hurry. Its chapters are brief, almost shy, as if truth prefers to speak in small rooms. They describe the Tao by pointing to what you already know with your hands. Water, valley, a piece of wood before the first cut. In this way, the Dao De Jing teaches your senses before it teaches your mind. Water is its favorite teacher. Water does not compete, yet it goes everywhere. It seeks the low places others ignore and by doing so, wears down mountains. When forced, it yields. When given time, it carves. This is Wu-Wei in motion. Not passivity, but the intelligence of not pushing where pushing only breaks things. Live like water, and you will find a path around the hard. Govern like water, and people won't feel a hand on their backs, only a river beneath their feet. The book praises what is empty because empty things work. A wheel moves because of the empty hub. A pot holds food because of the empty space inside. A room is useful because of the space where nothing is. Emptiness here doesn't mean absence. It means capacity. Leave space in your schedule and life can enter. Leave space in a conversation and truth might speak. Leave space in your chest and breath finds you again without being chased. Then there is the valley, low, receptive, unthreatening. The valley nourishes precisely because it does not try to be a peak. The text calls this the valley spirit, a way of being that collects without grabbing, supports without boasting, receives and therefore gives. To be valley-like is not to be small, it is to be a shape the world naturally flows toward. The uncarved wood, pew, is another image. Before a block is cut into pieces and assigned to roles, it is complete, simple, at ease. The sages suggest we keep a little of that uncut quality in ourselves. Fewer poses, fewer labels, less polishing. You can still shape your life, but you no longer sand it down to impress a stranger. From pew comes D, virtue, not as moral show, but as the quiet power of being what you are without strain. A pine's virtue is pine. Your virtue is the strength that appears when you stop pretending. The text returns again and again to softness and yielding. The newborn is soft, the corpse is hard. The tender wins by outlasting, not by overpowering. Even speech can follow this rule. Words that are true do not need to shout. Silence is not the opposite of saying. It is the ground that makes saying clean. For rulers, the book offers the same medicine in a bigger dose. Rule a large country like you, cook a small fish, gently, with minimal handling. The more you stir, the more it falls apart. When laws multiply, cleverness multiplies with them, and both become games. When leaders practice non-interference, people discover their own good sense. What you trust tends to become trustworthy. What you constantly suspect learns to hide. 3 small treasures are named: compassion, simplicity, and humility. Compassion keeps courage from becoming cruelty. Simplicity keeps abundance from becoming clutter. Humility keeps excellence from becoming arrogance. None of these require a stage. They work especially well when no one is keeping score. The Dao De Jing also speaks of returning. Everything bends back toward its source, day into night, tide into tide, ambition into rest. To fight this arc is to get tired in a way sleep cannot touch. To lean with it is to recover the energy you waste on arguing with seasons. Returning isn't regression, it's rhythm. Even breath is a kind of returning. Out, in, life-keeping time. You may notice the book's refusal to define. The way that can be told is not the constant way. At first, this sounds like a door slammed on understanding. Then it feels like a door open to experience. If you trap the river in a sentence, you lose your boat. Better to watch how things move, how a choice feels in the body, how a plan changes when you stop clutching it. The point is not to memorize verses, but to become the kind of person who can feel where to place the next foot. In ordinary days, the teachings are disarmingly practical. Lower your voice, soften the grip, spend less, notice more. When anger surges, wait for the mud to settle and the water to clear. When success arrives, step back half a pace. When you must act, act once and cleanly. When you need not act, don't fill the air with effort just to prove you're alive. If you are listening at night, let these images find you without effort. Water finding a low path, a valley holding mist, an uncarved block resting on a workbench no one is rushing to. Imagine you live your next hour like that. Less pushing, more aligning, less noise, more room. Imagine a conversation where you don't reach for the clever line and, because of that, the other person tells you something real. This is how the Dao De Jing works. Small verses, large weather. It doesn't command, it invites. It doesn't promise miracles, it offers sanity. It trusts that if you practice softness in small things, the big things will start to bend as well. And if you forget, it hands you a picture you can always remember. Be like water. In the next part, another voice will join us. Zhuangzi, the playful friend who turns paradox into a feather and lets it float. He will show the way with stories, of skill without strain, of dreams that blur the edge of identity, of freedom that laughs because it no longer needs to win. Walk a little farther down the night road, and you'll hear laughter, light, unhurried, the sound of someone who has stopped arguing with the world. That laughter belongs to Zhuangzi, the playful sage who teaches by stories that feel like dreams told by a friend. If the Dao De Jing is a pocket-sized compass, Zhuangzi is a lantern swinging in an easy hand, throwing moving shapes on the path so you learn to walk by feel, not by fear. He doesn't preach, he demonstrates. The most famous demonstration is the cook known as Butcher Ding. Asked how his blade stays sharp, Ding says he doesn't hack at meat. He follows the spaces between joints. At first, he saw the whole ox. After years, he sees with his spirit, letting the knife glide where there is no resistance. When he hears a knotty place, he pauses, softens, and the ox opens itself. Effort remains, but strain is gone. This is Wu-Wei made visible. Skill that listens so well, it looks effortless. You can feel it in any craft done long enough. Editing a sentence until it clicks, sanding a piece of wood until the grain agrees, speaking a hard truth when the room is ready and not a breath sooner. Then there is the butterfly dream. Zhuangzi dreams he is a butterfly, free and delighted, and waking, wonders whether he is Zhuangzi who dreamed he was a butterfly, or a butterfly now dreaming he is Zhuangzi. The point is not a puzzle to solve, but a loosening of the grip on any one identity. The more tightly you clutch me, the more fragile it feels. Let it widen, and life has room to move. Taoism doesn't erase the person. It lightens the borders so we can meet the world without armor. Zhuangzi loves what others call useless. A vast, gnarled tree grows by a road. Carpenters ignore it because its wood twists and hollows. Precisely because it is useless, the tree survives storms and centuries, offering shade and a place for birds. Zhuangzi smiles. Usefulness can be a trap. Uselessness can be a kind of freedom. Not everything needs to become lumber or profit. Some things, old trees, quiet evenings, unhurried talks, are ends in themselves, and by sheltering us, they prove their value in a gentler currency. When minds grow tight, Zhuangzi prescribes xinzhai, fasting of the mind. Close the pantry of opinions. Let thought grow lean. Do not force understanding. Let it arrive like a guest who comes by the back gate because you stopped blocking the front. He also praises Zhuangzi, sitting and forgetting, set down cleverness, status, even the name you keep polishing. You do not become a blank. You become porous, the way a valley receives wind. In that porosity, action returns on its own, cleaner and lighter than the plans we push. His compassion is quiet and roomy. Two friends watch fish flicker in a stream. "You're not a fish," one says. "How do you know what fish enjoy?" "You're not me," the other replies. "How do you know I don't know?" It's a joke with a soft center, certainty about other minds. Fish, friends, strangers, should be handled like a small fish, gently. When in doubt, err on the side of giving things the space to be what they are. Zhuangzi's freedom is not rebellion for its own sake. It is the freedom of fitting, like a door on good hinges, like a wheel that turns because its hub is empty. He pokes fun at solemn philosophers, not to sneer, but to deflate the stiffness that keeps us from moving. A sage for him is not a statue. A sage is someone who has become easy company to themselves, who can wear power lightly or poverty lightly, because neither is confused with the heart. Bring this down to ordinary life, and it becomes surprisingly practical. When a task resists, look for the seam. Where is the space between the joints? Maybe the timing is wrong. Maybe the angle can change. Maybe less force is more progress. When an opinion inflames, fast the mind. Return to breath, to steps, to hands doing one thing at a time. Clarity often follows quiet. When you feel useless, change the measure. Are you trying to be lumber when you are meant to be shade? Rest can be shelter. Play can be medicine. When identity gets rigid, loosen. Remember the butterfly. Let me be a melody, not a prison. Zhuangzi also has a tenderness for accepting change. He tells of a friend's death and refuses noisy grief rituals, not from coldness, but from a trust that forms come and go like seasons. When the drumbeat of becoming slows, he listens to the silence it leaves. This is not indifference. It is intimacy with impermanence. The less we fight the river, the more gently we travel with it, and the more love we have left for the shores we pass. If you are listening at night, imagine a small courtyard, moonlight on worn stones. Somewhere a kettle sings. A figure sits with eyes half closed, laughing now and then at thoughts that used to feel heavy. A moth circles and rests. In that courtyard, skill is not hurry. Wisdom is not thunder. It is a way of touching the world that leaves no bruise. A knife that does not clash with bone because it has learned the path of space. This is Zhuangzi's gift to the journey, the felt sense of Wu-Wei. Not an idea, a texture. You recognize it when you meet a person whose work looks simple but took years to learn. When you hear a sentence that lands as if the conversation built it by itself. When you move through a day with just enough effort and discover you have energy left for generosity. The way is not elsewhere. It is how you meet this moment when you stop trying to make it a different one. In the next part, we'll watch how these insights flowed into daily living, medicine and breath, yin-yang in food and season, rulers who tried to govern by non-interference, craftsmen who learned to feel materials with their whole bodies, Tao made practical, ordinary, and quietly kind. The way is not only in verses and parables, it threads through breath and food, weather and time, the grain of wood and the rhythm of work. To understand Taoism as a life, not merely a thought, step into an ordinary morning. Begin with breath. In quiet courtyards before sunrise, people stand with knees soft, spine like a young bamboo, hands floating as if holding a bowl of light. The practice has many names, but the feeling is simple. Let the breath breathe you. Inhale without stealing. Exhale without throwing anything away. Attention follows the inhale down to the belly, where warmth collects like a small coal. Movement is slow enough for the mind to catch up with the body. This is not exercise against the world, it is tuning to it, like a musician finding pitch before the song begins. From breath, attention widens to season. Taoist living listens to the year the way a sailor listens to wind. Spring rises, sow lighten food, step out earlier, let plans sprout but don't yank them tall. Summer expands, open windows, share meals, let sweat carry hurry away. Autumn refines, trim excess, store what matters, practice gratitude for what ripened. Winter returns, rest deeper, read longer, keep the stove of friendship warm. None of this is a rule. It is courtesy to the world that hosts us. When seasons are honored, the body sighs in relief. Decisions get a little easier because the weather inside you matches the weather outside. There is yin-yang at the table as well as in the sky. Foods that warm and energize balance, foods that cool and soften. Bitter, sour, sweet, pungent, salty. Each taste has a season, each meal a chance to unknit small knots. You do not need strict charts to feel the difference between a heavy stew in summer and a crisp pear after a winter walk. Taoist common sense whispers, eat what helps you meet the day. Not Puritanism, proportion. Not denial, fit. Work too changes texture when met with the way. You can feel the difference between forcing and following the seam. A carpenter learns the mood of grain under the plane. A calligrapher moves from shoulder, not fingers, so the line carries breath. A teacher stops mid-lesson because the room is saturated and a story will land better after silence. A parent kneels to the child's height and the argument evaporates because eyesight and heart sight now meet. Wu-Wei in practice looks like timing that feels kind. Taoism also has a political pulse. In certain old courts, advisors spoke of Huang-Lao, governance guided by the yellow earth's patience and the old master's restraint. Rule, they said, by setting few clear laws that echo the grain of people's lives. Over-police and you breed cleverness. Overtax and you thin the roots that feed the tree. The right touch is light. Create conditions where ordinary goodness can grow, then step back half a pace so credit flows to the people. Like that famous line, cook a small fish gently, too much stirring ruins it. A leader's ego is the biggest ladle to put away. Medicine in this view is not simply heroic rescue, but tending, keeping channels open so crisis comes less often and leaves sooner. Sleep is medicine. Laughter and unscattered company are medicine. A walk at the hour when birds complain and then forgive the day is medicine. Even grief, given space to move, becomes a sort of medicine, washing the eyes so the world can be seen again without the old fog. When illness does come, treatment tries to cooperate with the body's own repair instead of waging total war that leaves the field salted. The way respects emptiness as usefulness, so rooms are arranged for air to move, for light to arrive and leave. A home does not have to be grand. It has to breathe. The quiet corner where you drink tea is part of the architecture, a negative space that does by not being filled. In that corner, a human can become unhurried enough to tell the truth to themselves, which is among the rarest and most practical medicines. And when conflict insists, Taoist wisdom doesn't command surrender so much as it suggests soft angles. Ask a different question, change the setting, put the problem down and pick up the person. Most quarrels are two exhausted ideas locking horns in a narrow gate. Widen the gate and both can pass. Yielding here is not losing, it is making room for a better outcome. You might ask, is this simply advice to be vague and soft forever? Number. Taoism trusts that form appears when needed. The same water that yields to stone will, given time and path, carve a valley. The same hand that stays open most days can close firmly when it must, and open again before the grip becomes a habit. Even the sage carries a backbone. Test these images against one small hour of your own life. Leave a pocket of empty time on purpose and notice what returns. Eat one thing that actually suits the season you are in, not the season the ad promised. Breathe until the belly warms. Do one task at the speed of accuracy, not anxiety. Send one message that is shorter than your pride wanted. Praise a useless moment and watch it bloom into shelter. In this way, Taoism enters the house by the kitchen door and never leaves, because it isn't a guest. It is how the house wants to be lived in. The way stops being a philosophy and becomes the way you place a cup, the way you end a meeting, the way you know when to stop talking. You do less and somehow more happens. In the next part, we'll walk the border where Taoism met other great currents, Confucian order and legalist sharpness, and see how yielding and structure argued, borrowed from each other, and shaped an age. Picture three advisors at a ruler's table in the late warring states. One speaks of ritual and virtue, how people become humane when they're well taught and well led. Another argues for clear laws and strict rewards and punishments, how order appears when no one is above the rules. The third speaks softly of the way, how the best government often feels like good weather, present, supportive, almost invisible. These are the voices of Confucianism, legalism, and Daoism in council, sometimes clashing, sometimes borrowing each other's tools. Confucian thinkers trust cultivation. They prize Ren, humanness, and a Li, ritual, rightness, as daily practices that shape character the way water shapes stone. A good ruler, they say, governs first by example. Music, ceremonies, and education tune the social mind. When people feel seen and guided, law becomes a fence you rarely have to walk to. The Confucian hope is that decency can scale, family feeling extended outward until a state is a village written larger. Legalists answer, hope is not a policy. People chase advantage. Loyalty bends in wind. So write transparent laws, make the penalties real, the rewards reliable, and do not let private power overrun public order. The law's impersonality is its mercy. A state that winks collapses. A state that treats everyone as a favorite becomes a household, not a government. Build institutions that work when the ruler sleeps badly. The Taoist advisor listens and says, both of you see something, but beware overaction. Push and you create pushback. Micromanage and you breed clever evasion. The way favors proportion, doing just enough that the grain of things carries the rest. Later ages will call one political blend Huang-Lao. Rule with a light hand, few clear laws, and an eye for timing. Govern like water, finding the low channels, avoiding floods. The people will feel that they did it themselves, which is the only stable victory. History zigzags among these temperaments. A regime that leans hard on legalist levers can unify quickly and break quickly. A culture that leans only on Confucian virtue can drown in ceremony and favoritism. The Taoist reminder is not to abandon structure, but to practice non-forcing inside it. Prune laws so they're comprehensible. Reward honesty more than display. Remove perverse incentives so you don't need harsher punishments later. Wu-Wei in policy is restraint informed by clarity. The tensions show up in small rooms too. A Confucian teacher might counsel a difficult teenager with patient instruction and consistent ritual. Meals together, chores, respect in speech. A legalist-minded parent might set firm boundaries with known consequences and stick to them. A Taoist aunt visits and changes the angle. Fewer lectures, more listening. One wise rule instead of 12. Let the timing work for you. Sleep first. Talk tomorrow on a walk. None of these are wrong. Together, they describe a spectrum of care. Cultivate, codify, and, crucially, know when to stop meddling. Yin-Yang helps here. You don't solve the world by picking one permanent stance. In a crisis, legalist clarity, we do X now, can save lives. In rebuilding, Confucian cultivation, schools, trust, music, heals the fabric. Throughout, Taoist Wu-Wei reminds leaders not to become the storm they claim to calm. When policy follows the season, strict when necessary, gentle when possible, people sense fairness as something larger than a decree. You can feel this balance in design and work. A Confucian office prizes shared language and rhythms. A legalist office keeps processes audible and exceptions rare. A Taoist office protects empty time so good work has oxygen. The first builds meaning, the second reliability, the third ease. Teams thrive when all three are present and none is worshipped. The old texts also warn of the shadows. Confucian talk of virtue can mask nepotism and rigid hierarchy. Legalist talk of order can slip into fear and cruelty. Taoist talk of non-action can become avoidance, a refusal to act when action is needed. Wisdom is the ability to notice when your strength has turned into a disguise for laziness, vanity, or harm. What then is the Taoist contribution that lasts? A habit of loosening what doesn't need to be tight. A ruler, or parent, teacher, manager, who knows the difference between support and control. Laws like a well-made basket, strong, with gaps for air. Rituals like a well-loved path, clear but not a trench. And underneath both, a trust that people, given room and decent examples, often self-correct better than they obey. Imagine an official who cancels 3 useless meetings, rewrites one policy in plain speech, and spends the saved hour walking the market to listen. Imagine a classroom with one rule posted, no one gets hurt here, and everything else taught by tone. Imagine a city where enforcement is steady and transparent, and where leaders model the restraint they ask of everyone else. None of this is mystical. It is the way applied, timing, proportion, and a refusal to turn force into a habit. In the next part, the stream gathers new colors. Philosophical Daoism meets religious Daoism. Rituals and talismans, communal ethics, key practice, and the long experiment in longevity. The themes remain, soft over hard, timing over strain, but the forms blossom into a lived tradition with temples, lineages, and songs. What began as spare verses and playful stories grew, slowly, unevenly, into communities with altars and lineages. Philosophical Taoism kept its thin, bright blade. Alongside it, religious Taoism unfolded robes, bells, and books. The aim was not different, live in accord with the way, but the means widened. Ritual, healing, vows, practices of breath and energy, and myths that turned the sky into a family of teachers. Early movements organized households into ethics and mutual care. Priests kept registers, reconciled disputes, and taught precepts simple enough to hold. Don't harm, don't deceive, don't exploit. Temples became places where community was practiced, not just preached. A ritual might correct disorder, naming what's out of tune, aligning a person or village with seasons and directions. To modernize, some of this looks symbolic. For participants, symbol was a tool, a way to gather attention so the mind, body and place could heal together. The body became a landscape to tend. Breath led the way, slow, even, deep, sometimes guided through postures that later schools would call Daoyin or Qigong. The idea was not to dominate the body, but to cooperate with it, letting qi, the felt vitality of being alive, move freely. When breath and posture cooperate, mood often follows, digestion speaks more softly, sleep returns. These are not miracles, they are the respectful physics of a mammal paying attention to itself. From caring for flow, some sought long life. Two broad approaches appeared. One looked outward, herbs, minerals, elixirs, recipes from the mountains and laboratories that glowed at night. These outer alchemy experiments sometimes helped and sometimes harmed. The Wei's lesson here was that force, even in pursuit of longevity, can backfire. The other path turned inward, quieting the heart-mind, refining breath, circulating warmth, and imagining the body as a small cosmos where elements balance over time. This inner alchemy read the same old metaphors with new intimacy. Water softens fire. Stillness stores strength. Excess is sanded down until a person feels whole. Cosmology offered a map. Yin-Yang was joined by the 5 phases: wood, fire, earth, metal, water, not as substances, but as changing modes of the world. A healer might see a pattern of exhaustion and say the water aspect is low. Advice would include rest in winter, salt and dark greens, earlier nights, slower breath. A farmer, an architect, a musician, each could use the same schema to meet their craft with seasonal sense. Whether or not one believes in cosmic correspondences, the pragmatic core remains. Live with the grain of time. Religious Daoism also taught a different relation to loss. Death was not merely defeat, it was transformation inside a larger field. Myths of immortals wandering mountains offered an image of freedom. Funerary rites helped the living place their grief in a story big enough to carry it. Meanwhile, daily precepts kept the living from slowly dying while still breathing. Don't let greed hollow you. Don't let anger make you simple. Don't let fear choose your voice. Temples flowered with music and ink. A chant could be a form of breathing together. A talisman could be a prayer written as a picture, carried the way one carries a reminder in a pocket. The great Taoist canon grew, miscellaneous, sometimes contradictory, like a mountain library where every traveller leaves notes. Among the shelves you find medical handbooks, meditation guides, hymns, stories, star charts, a civilization's attempt to converse with the way in every register it knows. Skeptics point to superstition, defenders point to results. A widow comforted, a fever cooled, a village that treats strangers decently because their temple taught them to share. The fairest reading is that religious Taoism is a toolbox, part science of habit and breath, part art of symbol and song. Use the tool that fits. Don't force a wrench to be a brush or a brush to be a key, and the philosophical thread never vanished. Good priests remembered Wu-Wei, rituals performed with light hands, authority worn lightly, teachings offered like water, available, not pushed. The best lineages insisted that technique without virtue curdles, that compassion and simplicity remain the 3 treasures, that humility keeps every power from swallowing the person who uses it. You can feel the inheritance in very ordinary places. An elder who teaches a child to breathe through worry. A neighborhood that holds a quiet festival at the turn of seasons. A physician who prescribes not just pills, but rest at dusk. A worker who changes a brutal schedule rather than a broken body. Under different names, in modern rooms, the old gestures continue. The stream has branched, but the taste is the same, less forcing, more fitting. The rites gather community, the breath gathers mind, the seasons gather patience, the precepts gather kindness, and when all this gathering is done well, it loosens us, so we can meet the world with a touch that leaves no bruise. In the next part, bridges appear. Taoist ease wanders into Chán/Zen. Ink turns emptiness into line. Gardens teach stillness without a sermon, and the Wei learns to speak in art as fluently as it speaks in wind and water. Buddhism arrived in China on dusty roads, monks with bowls and sutras, traders with stories of a prince who woke beneath a tree. To be heard, the new teachings had to learn the local music. Translators reached for Taoist words to carry Buddhist ideas across the river. Tao for the path, Wu for the open space beyond clinging, quiet phrases for a silence that was not emptiness, but full capacity. The meeting wasn't a merger. It was a conversation. What Buddhism brought: non-self, compassion, the seeing that loosens grief, found familiar chairs at a Taoist table where Wu-Wei and Ziran already lived. From this conversation grew Chán, later called Zen in Japan. Chán did not reject sutras, it simply refused to hide behind them. Point directly to the mind, it said. See your nature. Become at ease. The spirit was Taoist in its lack of fuss, Buddhist in its insight into clinging. A master answered questions by pouring tea exactly, by lifting a broom, by laughing at the right time. The lesson was not the performance, it was the texture of attention underneath it. Nothing extra, nothing forced. Stories carried the method. A monk begged for wisdom. The master poured tea until the cup overflowed. Like this cup, he said, your mind is full. Empty it. Another asked about the way. The master pointed to a cypress tree in the courtyard. Words bowed to things as they are. A slap, a shout, a stone held up to the light. Each could be a gate when it landed inside the moment, not as theatre, but as timing. The fifth patriarch asked his students to write a verse that showed their understanding. One wrote, "The body is a Bodhi tree, the mind a mirror bright. Wipe it carefully, hour by hour, let no dust alight." It sounds right. Polish the mind until it shines. Then came Yin-Yang, a kitchen worker who had not studied much at all. Originally, there is no tree, nor any mirror bright. Since nothing really exists, where could the dust alight? It was not a denial of the world. It was non-grasping, stated cleanly. The robe and bowl passed to the one who saw the space before polishing begins. Chán liked work. Sweep the floor, chop wood, carry water, sit, stand, bow. The point wasn't austerity. It was learning to place the mind where the hands are. Meditation was not escape. It was the end of the habit of living a few inches away from what you're doing. In this, you can hear a Taoist echo, the craft that follows the seams, the cook whose blade never dulls because he moves through the spaces in the joints, the refusal to add effort where no effort is needed. Where Buddhism cautioned against attachment, Daoism had long counselled non-forcing. Put together, they encouraged a posture that is lively and unhooked. Act fully, release quickly. Compassion entered through that same gate. When you stop gripping the world to steady yourself, you have hands free to help. The famous Zen line, "Everyday mind is the way," is simply Taoist Ziran in Buddhist clothes. Ordinary life, seen without the fog of me first, is already a field of practice. Chán did not dismiss beauty, but it distrusted decoration. A room swept clean felt more truthful than a hall of gold. A single bell struck once, and silence finishing the teaching, seemed more exact than a long argument. This wasn't grim minimalism, it was mercy for the nervous system. Fewer distractions make kindness easier to remember. You do not need a monastery to test this. Try answering one email as if it were a bow. Try washing one cup as if the cup could somehow teach you to breathe. Try speaking one sentence less in a conversation and letting the other person arrive where you were about to push them. These aren't rules. They're doorways into the same room Chán built in the mind, bare, bright, usable. The bridge held both directions. Taoist ease kept Chán from getting tangled in metaphysics. Buddhist discipline kept Taoist softness from melting into vagueness. Together, they made a style of attention that feels like a well-made garden path. Not rigid, not wild, gently guiding your feet toward a view that was there all along. Next, the way will learn to draw and pour. Ink and mountain, garden and stone, calligraphy and tea, arts where emptiness becomes line, and line teaches what emptiness is for. If philosophy is the spoken river, art is the river made visible. In China, Taoist ease and Chán directness seeped into the brush, the garden rake, the tea bowl, until the look of things began to carry the ethic of the way. Take shan shui, mountain water painting. Ink on paper suggests peaks in mist, pines clinging to rock, a hut with a tiny figure brewing tea. What's striking isn't the detail, it's the space. Blank paper is not empty. It's cloud, breath, possibility. Painters leave room for the eye and mind to travel, the way the Tao leaves room for beings to be what they are. A single brushstroke can feel like a ridge you could walk for days. Texture is created by patient layers, pauses, pressure changes, a choreography of Wu-Wei done with hair and ink. Calligraphy goes even closer to the nerve. Each character is a snapshot of mind in motion. You can see hesitation, pride, relief, a laugh that happened just before the stroke landed. Because the brush cannot be corrected without trace, calligraphy punishes pretense and rewards presence. The best hands are not stiff or showy, they're breathing. Taoist softness shows up as a line that tapers like wind, leaving a field. Chán clarity shows up as a stroke that knows when to stop. In the scholar's garden, stones are mountains by persuasion. Water is placed to suggest both source and sea. Paths bend so the view unfolds instead of shouting its whole name at the gate. Asymmetry is favoured. Surprise is a form of courtesy. You turn a corner and a window is cut in a wall like the moon, framing bamboo that converses with breeze. Nothing is accidental, yet nothing feels strained. The garden teaches you how to walk without lecture, slowly, curiously, with room to turn. Even tea becomes a philosophy you can drink. Heat, leaf, water, cup. The simplest ceremony reminds the hand to be exact without stiffness, the eye to attend without grabbing. A good pour is non-forcing made liquid. The wrist yields. Gravity does the work. Temperature and time set the pace. The first sip is a kind of instruction. Pay attention to what is actually here. When shared, tea is how emptiness becomes hospitality. Space cleared so another person can arrive. Music had its mirrors. The Queen, with its 7 strings on a plain wooden board, refuses spectacle. Notes seem to appear out of wood and vanish into air, like thoughts you didn't push that turned out to be the truest ones. Poems travelled with these arts, not as slogans but as breaths pinned to paper, praising fog, a heron's patience, the way snow makes sound louder by covering it. What unites these forms is not a rule book but a sensibility. Remove what you don't need, let materials speak, honour negative space. Act with timing rather than pressure. Aim for the moment where ease and accuracy become the same gesture. The aesthetic is ethical. A cluttered room breeds a cluttered mind. A forced line reveals a forced conversation. An over-designed garden feels like an argument with the visitor. When you touch things lightly, they answer with cooperation. You can bring this home without a scroll or a pond. Clear one surface and keep it clear. Choose one cup you love and use it every day until it teaches your hand where the handle wants to be. When you write a message, let one sentence be shorter than your habit. Step aside in a doorway and discover that grace can be a spatial skill. Plant something. Watch how it refuses your schedule and obeys a deeper one. Learn from that. In these arts, the Tao becomes visible patience. The painter does not trap the mountain is invited. The gardener does not dominate water. A bend is offered and water takes it. The calligrapher does not wrestle the line. Wrist, breath, and paper agree for a second, and the agreement becomes a mark. The viewer feels the same agreement in the body and calls it peace. The stream will soon widen into our own century. Attention hacked by glowing rectangles, speed sold as salvation, rooms that forget how to breathe. And we'll ask how the way can still be a tool for mercy in a bright, noisy age. Cities hum like beehives, and the beehive now fits in a pocket. Our attention is woven into networks of light, sold and resold while we blink. Schedules fill, rooms thicken with signals, and even rest can feel like an item on a list. In this brightness, the old suggestion, do less but fit better, lands with the weight of medicine. One modern doorway into Taoist ease is the experience people now call flow, doing something so well fitted to your capacity that self-consciousness loosens and action seems to happen by itself. An athlete times a stride, a coder follows a thread through a problem, a potter's hands know the bowl before the mind has named it. Flow is not magic, it's friction lowered, clear goals, instant feedback, focus unscattered, difficulty just right. The tradition's word was Wu-Wei, non-forcing, not non-doing, and the description matches. When effort stops arguing with circumstance, energy goes farther. Another bridge is our body's electricity. You do not need mystic diagrams to feel the nervous system unclench when breath deepens and exhale lengthens. The Tao of breath, slow, even through the nose, down to the belly, nudges the body towards safety. Safe bodies learn, tight bodies repeat. The choice is not between ancient and modern, but between useful and noisy. Keep what steadies, drop what scatters. The world outside the skin answers to the same grammar. An ecology is a textbook of non-forcing. Every creature adjusts, trades, yields, occupies a niche, and the sum is a living map. Push one lever too hard, and a system wobbles. Build with a river and a floodplain can be a garden. Build against it, and you import disaster. Design that respects flow, curved paths, cross-ventilation, shade instead of brute air conditioning, feels better because it cooperates with how wind, light, heat, and bodies like to move. The Tao doesn't oppose technology, it opposes tone deafness. Even activism can borrow this posture. There are seasons for pressure and seasons for patience. Timing and angle matter. A message that meets people where they already stand travels farther than a perfect speech aimed at nobody's present state. This isn't softness as surrender. It's strategy that refuses to burn the fuel it needs for the long road. In personal life, simple plenty outlasts glitter. A room with breathing space calms the eye and reduces the urge to buy more to quiet the more we just bought. Tools you trust make action smooth. You need fewer of them when they fit. Food that suits the weather, warm on cold days, fresh on hot ones, does half the work of mood and energy before you think about motivation. Sleep placed earlier in the night is stronger sleep. Doing one thing at a time is not a moral claim. It's efficiency of attention. All of this is Wu-Wei's habit. Check the current before you paddle. Screens complicate the story. The same glass that steals an hour can return a poem, a teacher, a map. The difference is compassionate boundaries. Treat the phone like a clever dragon. Respect, clear rules, no invitation to the pillow. If a tool is designed to keep you, design back. Grayscale, notifications off by default. A few empty hours in the week, as if they were appointments with a friend. You will recognize the taste, quiet that is an emptiness, energy that returns on exhale. Workplaces can be tuned the same way. A team that protects focus, fewer pings, clearer blocks, finishes more with less strain. Meetings shrink when their purpose is asked aloud. Processes written in plain language remove hidden thorns. Praise flows to outcomes rather than theatre. Leaders resist the addiction to constant steering and create conditions in which good work appears without a trumpet. And relationships. The way is a patient translator. Listen for what is trying to happen instead of what your pride wants. Shift questions from who is right to what would work here. When conflict heats, slow the tempo, change the room, lower the volume of certainty. Yielding is not defeat when it guides the conversation into a space where better options live. If these sound small, that's on purpose. The way is a long collection of small rightnesses. When you stop insisting on drama, progress becomes a habit. You do not need to fix the century tonight. You need to tune one hinge so the door moves without scrape, and then another, until the whole house opens easily and you remember you liked living there. The paradox remains beautiful. Less spectacle, more effect. Fewer moves, cleaner results. A life that looks soft and ends up hard to break. Let's put tools in the hand. 1. Find the seam. When a task resists, stop pushing and change the angle. Ask, where is there space? In writing, start with the paragraph that's ready. In negotiation, look for a smaller agreement that makes the larger one possible. In habit change, shrink the goal until success is friction light. 2 minutes of practice, not an hour. 1 room cleared, not a house. Momentum is the child of easy beginnings. 2. Set the water level. Your day is a cup. Pour to the brim and every step spills. Schedule white space between blocks. Protect 1 hour a day or 3 half hours where nothing is allowed to claim you. That emptiness is not wasted time. It's the hub that makes the wheel move. 3. Make rules few and real. For teams and families, draft 3 clear agreements everyone can remember. We keep commitments or renegotiate early. We don't escalate volume. We leave spaces better than we found them. Fewer rules, less clever evasion, more trust. 4. Write like a valley. Emails, briefs, texts. Make them short, human, specific. Lead with the ask, include context, end with the smallest next step that moves the work. Words that flow downhill get answered. 5. Use the weather. Match work to your seasons. If your mind is bright in the morning, place heavy tasks there and protect that time like a temple. If afternoons sag, schedule errands, movement, or empty minutes. Fighting your rhythm is a tax no one refunds. 6. Decide by subtraction. When stuck between options, remove what you can. What constraint is false? What feature is theatre? What urgency belongs to someone else's story? Often the right choice appears when the field is less crowded. 7. Let endings end. Projects, roles, arguments. Close them cleanly. Return the keys, write the summary, thank the people, archive the notes. Unfinished is a drag on attention. Wu-Wei is not only graceful action, it is graceful stopping. 8. Practice the 3 treasures. Compassion. Before you correct, ask what would help. Simplicity. Choose the smaller good that you'll repeat over the larger good you'll abandon. Humility. Assume partial sight. Invite other eyes. These 3 keep skill from turning into sharpness that cuts the hand that holds it. 9. In conflict, slow time. Lower your breath into the belly, and lengthen the exhale. Name the shared aim out loud. Replace "why did you" with "what would make this workable?" If heat remains, suggest a place change, walk, window, fresh air. Different rooms hold different answers. 10. Design the room to help you. Put what you want to do in reach. Make what you want to avoid slightly harder. Cushion by the window. Book on the cushion. Phone charger in the hall, not by the bed. Environment beats willpower when you're tired. 11. Celebrate small hollows. Once a day, leave one thing unsaid that doesn't need saying. Once a week, cancel one obligation that only maintains a mask. Once a month, give away something that asks to be useful somewhere else. Space returns like tide. 12. Keep a seasonal ledger. Each quarter, ask 4 questions. Spring: what wants to start if I stop forcing? Summer: what wants full energy now? Autumn: what wants trimming and storing? Winter: what wants deep rest or ending? Decision-making becomes agricultural, alive to time, rather than theatrical. 13. Remember the body. Before a meeting, shoulders down, jaw soft, 3 slow breaths. Before a big choice, walk until your pulse forgets your name. After a win, step back half a pace. Let pride cool into gratitude so it won't harden into entitlement. 14. Teach by weather, not thunder. If you lead, set conditions where good work happens without you. Praise in public, correct in private, model the restraint you ask for. When you must say no, say it cleanly and once. When you can say yes, get out of the way. None of this is asceticism. It's a kinder form of effectiveness. You are not asked to be less alive. You are invited to spend less life on friction. The proof will not be an applause line. It will be a quieter room, a steadier calendar, fewer apologies for things you never meant to promise, and a kind of stamina that feels like a well refilled rather than bravery burned. If you keep even a handful of these tools within reach, your days will start to share a family resemblance. Fewer sharp corners, more right-sized effort, the sense that you are moving with rather than against. That feeling is what the old books meant by the way, not a secret mountain, but the ordinary path under your feet when you let the ground carry some of your weight. Count forward from the first questions and you can trace a thread through centuries. Kingdoms arguing, sages walking, short books passed like cups between friends. Count backward from your own day, and the same thread is in your hands. The feeling that pushing harder does not fix what pushing broke. The hunch that clarity and kindness are not rivals. The relief you feel when a room finally breathes. If Taoism has a ledger, it isn't written in victories. It's written in textures that keep returning. Texture of timing. You know it from crafts and kitchens, gardens and meetings. A moment ripens, then cools. The right action has a temperature. Too soon and it bruises. Too late and it sours. Wu-Wei doesn't mean waiting forever. It means waiting correctly and moving decisively. One cut where 10 flinches would have been. Texture of space. The old lines about pots and hubs were never really about pottery. They were an argument for emptiness as function, the unscheduled hour that lets new work exist, the pause in a sentence that lets honesty be heard, the breathing margin in a budget that prevents panic from making choices. You do not worship the gap, you use it. Texture of proportion. Yin and Yang refuse to be enemies because life refuses permanent extremes. Softness isn't superior to strength. It's a way strength returns to itself without snapping. A backbone without a clenched jaw. A yes that doesn't become a habit. A no that doesn't become a character. Texture of attention. Zhuangzi's butcher was not a stunt. He was a mirror for any skill that listens more than it insists. The mind that can feel the seam in a task tends to feel the seam in a quarrel, and often the seam in a year. You start recognizing where things want to go. Texture of restraint. Politics taught it the hard way. Over-legislate and cleverness multiplies. Over-moralize and masks bloom. The light touch isn't laziness, it's the craft of not adding friction. Tidy 2 rules instead of writing 20. Walk the market. Rewrite the form so a human can fill it. Texture of mercy. Simplicity is not aesthetic snobbery. It's a kindness to nerves. A room with air. A message in plain words. A meeting that stops when it's done. An apology without a tour guide. Mercy is the shape of intelligence when intelligence is not trying to show off. Under these textures sits a quiet anthropology. Beings are more cooperative than we fear when we stop cornering them, including ourselves. The self is not a fortress to maintain, it's a field to tend. When you stop guarding the parapets all day, you find pathways through that field you didn't know existed. Pride loosens into dignity. Dignity makes patience affordable. The tradition does not promise a life without storms. It promises less self-made weather. You still get winter, but you stop planting tomatoes in January and claiming fate is cruel. You still get heat, but you open a window before a sermon about the window's philosophy. You still get grief, of course you do. But you stop being surprised that love has a cost and start building a house that can hold it. If there is a sentence to keep, maybe it is this: do less. Let more happen. Not as passivity, as collaboration with the grain of things. The world is not your enemy, and you are not the world's CEO. You are a participant with good hands. The way, when it's living in you, feels like a good tool in those hands. Weight balanced. Handle fitted, purpose clear. You can test the ledger without any incense. Tomorrow you will meet a choice that looks like a wall. Do 3 small things. Loosen your breath, subtract 1 unnecessary gesture, and ask the question that moves from who is right to what will work. If you want a ritual, let it be this: 1 act of non-forcing every day, not dramatic, repeated. And if you need an emblem, do not chase the butterfly. Let it rise when it rises. Put a bit of shade in the yard instead. The shade will serve you, and the butterfly and a stranger passing, and you will not have to explain what you've done. The ledger will record it in its own way, the way quiet things keep score, by how much easier it is to be decent afterward. There is an old story of a traveller who arrives at evening and finds a gate half open. No guard, no decree. Just the sense that beyond it there is a place arranged with care, not fuss. He enters, and the path curves, not to hide anything, but to let each view reveal itself when it's ready. He walks slower without deciding to. That is what the way has been all along, a different way of arranging the ground. Arrange your days so beginnings are small and repeatable. Not heroic starts, just good ones. A cup, a page, a task until it clicks, a pause that you respect like an appointment. Arrange your talk so truth has room to travel. Shorten 1 sentence. Listen for the seam you can follow instead of the bone you'll shatter. Arrange your rooms so air and light can move. Put fewer things where your eyes rest. Keep 1 surface empty on purpose and let that emptiness be useful. When anger arrives, arrange time. 10 breaths down in the belly. A walk until the body stops announcing the past. Then speak. When joy arrives, arrange endings. Leave the party while you still like the music. Step back half a pace. Write the note that thanks the people who made it possible. When grief arrives, arrange help and weather. Eat warm food. Go out in the morning light. Sit with someone who lets silence have its full height. The way doesn't cancel sorrow. It keeps you porous enough that sorrow doesn't cancel you. If you lead, arrange conditions rather than heroics. Hire for conscience as much as competence. Make 3 rules everyone can remember, and live them where someone would notice if you didn't. Design meetings that end when they're done. Replace secrecy with clarity and bullying with quiet backbone. Your power is not the storm you can summon, It's the climate you can make mild. If you love, arrange ease, not negligence. Ease. The shared joke that lowers everyone's shoulders. The habit of asking, what would make this easier for you? The choice to be hard to offend when tired strangers collide with your day. The willingness to be moved by something other than pride. Love that requires ceremony to exist is theatre. Love that arranges life to be more livable is craft. The old books named 3 small treasures: compassion, simplicity, humility. Keep them where you keep your keys. Compassion first. Assume partial sight and add warmth. Simplicity next. Prefer the smaller good you'll repeat over the larger good you'll abandon by Wednesday. Humility always. Remember that you didn't invent sunlight, bread, or forgiveness. You are borrowing them, and they work better when shared. At the end of any practice worth the name, a person is usually quieter, not because they know secrets, but because they no longer waste their voice proving they exist. Presence replaces performance. Work replaces theatre. In that quiet, problems don't vanish. They right-size. The unsolvable becomes the unneeded. The urgent becomes the scheduled. The important becomes the done. What remains is ordinary and somehow enough. Air moving through a room. Water doing what water does. A tool that fits the hand. Work that ends where it should. Talk that heals more than it scores. A path that bears the weight of many feet without resentment. You can close the gate now, not locked, just closed. The path will still be there in the morning. You know where it begins. In the exact place your next breath meets your ribs. In the empty bit of time you keep unguarded. In the first small favor you do for the day, so it will be kinder to you and to whoever meets you on it. Walk well.